Hey Chrissy, it's Julia, the ex-English major. It is April. We have finished another month. I cannot even believe it. I feel like I blinked and this month was over. So in common Julia fashion, I am going to do a quick run through, or not so quick run through, of the books that I read this month. So that way you can decide if any of these you think are something you want to pick up and add to your TBR, or maybe if these are ones that you think you're going to skip. I am going through the 10 books that I read this month. I had a really good month there where I feel like there were quite a few like standouts that I just really enjoyed this month, and one of them is my favorite book that I've read so far this year. I should probably save it to the end, but I always go through the books in the order that I read them, just in case you are new to my channel or this is the first reading wrap-up video of mine that you've seen. I don't give star ratings, I give arbitrary ratings. I like a wide variety of books. Because of that, I tend to just give an arbitrary rating. That was actually an idea that my husband gave me. So that way you can still find out how much I enjoyed the book without necessarily going off of and me just saying, I liked this classic that's 5 stars, and I also liked this little fairy romance book that's 5 stars. The very first book that I picked up is Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. And you may have noticed that I pretty recently posted a recap on this one. I absolutely loved this book. I originally wasn't going to post that video just because I feel like the lighting wasn't very good. It was after work and I was a little bit exhausted, but I figured, hey, sometimes you can just throw in a video that maybe, in my opinion, wasn't the best that I've ever made. But that way I really just wanted to get the news out there about this book, because I've heard this one around a little bit, but in my opinion, this story definitely needs more hype. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. For my arbitrary rating for Half a Soul, I'm going to give this one 3 iron scissors. I thought that this was super inventive. I really liked the story. It was very whimsical. It was very magical. I loved the romance between our 2 main characters. It felt very much like it was avoiding a lot of the popular tropes that we see with kind of grumpy sunshine characters. It feels like it could go that way and then it completely changes. Beautiful writing, very lyrical writing, and just a all-around really good story. And it's a very PG romance story. So if you want just a good, clean, whimsical, fun time, I would highly recommend picking up Half a Soul. Even if maybe romance or romantasy isn't your preferred genre, I would give this one a try. I thought it was absolutely amazing. It is a little bit of a brain off book simply because there are some politics that are just kind of used as a prop. It mentions some of the kind of social issues of the Regency time period without really giving them a lot of depth, in my opinion. It's more of just a background to kind of fill in some of the reasons that characters are the way that they are. So that is a little bit of a ding in this one's column, but overall, I absolutely loved this book. And I think that this one would be a great one, especially if you are dipping your toe in either fantasy romance or you just want a fun little fairy love story here. I would definitely recommend Half a Soul. The next book that I picked up is one that I have heard over and over again, and that is Evenings and Weekends. Spoiler, I'm going to rate this one 2 people on the edge of a mental breakdown. This one just was not for me. You could tell that it was crafted really well. There was a lot of thought in this. It's just not something that I personally really enjoyed. The story of this one is we are following a group of characters and we're jumping around into multiple people's heads. They all are connected in some way, and they are going through, it's kind of like a slice of life in London, England in the middle of a heat wave in summer. And we are watching as various things are happening in everyone's life, and everyone's life is being rocked. And it's a little bit of a portrayal of kind of the adage, you should take care to be kind to others because you never know what others are going through. I thought that that was just a really, really good part. I don't want to kind of say that this is not a good book because it absolutely was. It just wasn't for me. We are following all of these characters as they are all coming into very large realizations about things that they thought they believed in their life. So, for example, one of the characters is an expectant mother. She is the only one in her friend group who is expecting a child. A lot of her friends are kind of these big artists who are kind of out and about in the London scene and are doing really successful things in their career. And she is taking a step back to get married to her high school sweetheart because they're having a baby. And she is reflecting on, do I even want to be a mother? But I don't want to get rid of this child. I am feeling separated from my friends. People don't really understand me. I'm the first one going through this. And so she is grappling with that realization. We have another character who is realizing that he is gay and is coming to terms with, oh my goodness, I am with this woman who I love, but I am not sexually attracted to her really. And I'm much more attracted to men, and kind of the closetedness of being gay and coming to terms with his sexuality kind of in his mid-20s, early 30s. We have another character who is openly gay and is in a very casual relationship with a couple other men. And so the relationship dynamic there of kind of this polyamorous relationship and how he feels more connected to one of the men than the other, and he wishes that the other man would just be with him only, and kind of the grappling with, do I want to be in this polyamorous relationship? If I say something, am I rocking the boat too much? Will I even be understood and accepted, or will they decide no and kick me out? We have a woman who she is a mother to the mother of one of these characters in the story. And she has this cancer diagnosis that she is refusing to tell about her children about because she's just too afraid to put this big heavy burden into their lives, and worried about how if she speaks the words into existence that she has cancer and starts telling people about it, that it makes it more real. But she's facing very near the end of her life, and it's getting more and more like she can't put off telling her family this news. And so it is a very interesting, very well written, very good book about the things that we keep to ourselves and what we have going on internally while we're living our lives, all set in this big heat climate crisis happening in London and just the day-to-day life. So it is a very good book, all that is to say. It just wasn't something that I enjoyed. It felt like every single chapter was just a punch in the face. And the writing style was very much matter of fact, which for me kind of made sense. It kind of felt like the author was going through in the page, writing down how when you go through a big trauma, when you have a lot of these big, heavy things happening to you, you sometimes pinpoint something and you're focused on something like small that's tangible as opposed to the big thing. So if you're going through a big horrible issue, then sometimes it's easier to focus on the fact that, oh, there's a hole in my jeans and the hole in my jeans is uncomfortable, and I can poke through it and I can focus on this hole in my jeans and not focus on the fact that I have life-ending cancer and I only have a few months left to live, if that. So there's a lot of that, but it was just a lot of hyper fixating on these small details. And not that that's not true to life. I think that's extremely true to life. I just wanted to get more into the meat. So for me, the writing style just wasn't my favorite. If this book sounds at all interesting to you, I would pick this up because it was a really, really good book. Just personally, it wasn't doing it for me. And so wanted to give kind of my 2 cents on that I know that it's a me issue. I know that this book is for someone. It just wasn't for me at the time. Okay, we've got to honestly the best book that I have read all year. This is Chain Gang All Stars, and I had heard inklings that it was going to be a really good book, and so just picked it up, had it on my shelf for a rainy day. I absolutely loved this book. I don't know if you've ever just finished a book and suddenly it's just like, that is absolutely this book. This one is so good. It is extremely heavy, but I genuinely, like, this should be required reading. I want everyone in my life to read this book. It's very much just, it's a horrifyingly close to real life, in my opinion, dystopian novel. And so if you're interested in dystopians, if you are interested in kind of not too far off of how the prison system actually is, and a book that is kind of an amalgamation of just like these crazy stories with also these footnotes, and some of the footnotes are very clearly made up because they're talking about histories of companies, or the mechanics behind some of the film equipment that's being filmed in this story. And then you just get punched in the face with real life footnotes from active court cases, legislation, pieces of law put in place by various different United States presidents, and what it was that was put in place by, let's say there was some from Reagan, there's some from the Bush administration. And so you've got these real life, you can point to and find information about pieces as a footnote in the broader story. And it really just takes this whole thing and makes you examine just how closely this story is to real life. So I absolutely loved this book. I am going to give it 12 televised sporting events. And I think that everyone should read this. It is a little bit dark, maybe, you know, I would hesitate to say that this should be high school required reading, maybe like AP senior level, but at minimum, I think that this should be taught like freshman year of college. I think that this is a fantastic book that is taking what you can do with fiction and what you can do with dystopian fiction, and how closely fiction can be tied to real life. And it feels very much like this could be something that could be enacted in the future if we don't do something about it. This story, I would kind of describe it as Hunger Games meets the prison system. This is in the near future United States, where we have private prisons in place, much like we do today. And in order to ensure that the private prison systems continue to make money and can profit from the people that are being kind of detained in these prisons, then you as a prisoner can sign yourself away to fight to the death in a kind of gladiator style arena, where you are put on a team with other prisoners who have signed themselves away, and you are on this gang. The one that we're following for the most part is called the Chain Gang All Stars, but you are in this group, and it's kind of a group sport of hunting down and killing other people who have signed themselves away for profit on television. And so it is something where it's seen as a way to kind of commute your sentence. If you fight in X amount of games and you've lasted for a certain amount of seasons, then you get freedom one way or another. You can be freed by being killed in this sporting event to the screaming televised fans. So you either win freedom through death, or if you have survived long enough, then you become the person who is made free because your sentence is reduced. You get to walk away. And so we're following a large group of people from various groups, and you have to travel around the United States and fight to the death whenever you get to your next arena. And so we're following various people from various gangs, various different groups of all of them talking about the things that they did in the past. They're planning for the future. We're watching them as they become friends, as they become enemies, as they fall in love. And you're also seeing snippets of chapters from the point of view of some of the spectators. And you've got kind of the people who are putting together these events and trying to drum up sponsorships, the kind of the CEOs of these things, about how we're trying to maximize shareholder value for these people to continue to get more eyes on this, on these fights. You've got these sports fanatics, the men who are extremely, extremely interested in this, follow it religiously, have stats for all of these prisoners, and their kill counts, and are watching the highlight reels from previous seasons. We have people who are watching these and are absolutely disgusted, but ultimately are kind of getting off on it. We've got people who are family members of people who are in prison and having to watch as their parents and their families are fighting to the death on television. People who are put in these prisons for things that they didn't do, and so they think that the only way to get out is to sign up for these. And then all of these storylines, and honestly, as parts of it are a romance story between two of the women who are in this group. But you've got all of these different pieces, people who are pro the sport, people who are anti the sport, the protests going on, but ultimately the CEOs who keep it all running and keep filming it and are trying to get more and more eyes on it, the news systems who are sensationalizing it. And throughout it all, you are given these footnotes of just various pieces, and some of the footnotes are completely made up and are, about the various technologies in place, or maybe how far away one sporting arena is to another. But then some of the footnotes are extremely real and are documented pieces that are from parts of legislation, and the author has listed where you can go up and look them up. And so it is really, really good. It's very harrowing. I genuinely, like I said, I think that this should be required reading. If not for kind of, senior year of high school, then at minimum freshman year of college or community college, because I think it is very, very interesting and is something that this is a warning for what prison systems could turn into with these for-profit prisons, if we don't have some certain stopgaps in place. And I thought it was really interesting. My favorite book of the month. Next here, I have a book pick from one of my book clubs that I'm doing with my friends. This is my friend Ariana's book pick here, Dungeon Crawler Carl. I'm going to give Dungeon Crawler Carl 4 fluffy cats. Unpopular opinion, I did not like Dungeon Crawler Carl. I am sorry, Ariana. We will talk more about this when we are in book club, but for me, it just wasn't my jam. I know it's so popular. I know that this is a very well-beloved book, and I don't want to rag on it too much in case this is something that gets you into science fiction, if this is the book that gets you into reading. I think that just lit RPG is not my jam. I'm not somebody who plays video games. I reserve that to my husband. I will sit in the corner and read and watch him play to my heart's content, but it's just not really for me. And honestly, in my opinion, this book it felt very, very much like if you took Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and made it underground instead of in space. It's very absurd. It has a lot of just kind of crazy, wild, and wacky little gimmicks. And that just absurdism coupled with kind of the basic knowledge that you need when it comes to playing video games was just not necessarily my combo. There are some very lovable aspects to this. I kind of love the dynamic between Carl and Princess Donut. I thought that was fantastic. There are these moments where you have these really, really real paragraphs about like the sacrifice of like you're introduced to a lot of the other players in the game, and some of the life stories, particularly with some of the nurses, who are just trying to keep a group of nursing home patients alive in this end of the world disaster. Absolutely beautiful and so like tugging on your heartstrings. And then so you just kind of go back and forth between these really, really touching moments and then just these absurd bits. And so it's not all bad. It just was not for me. There wasn't really much of a story arc. It does kind of just end on a cliffhanger. And I wasn't bought in enough to be continuing on the series. So Dungeon Crawler Carl is not for me, but it is a book for someone. The next book that I picked up is The Other Boleyn Girl. I will just quickly speed run this one because I have a video that I did in depth. So I'll go ahead and link that one here for you. But this one, I'm going to give 7 fun glimpses into potential history. From an educational standpoint, I'm not a Boleyn historian. Actually, after reading this book, I have been listening to a lot of history podcasts. So it did kind of get me into kind of spearhead some of that. I found this podcast that I'm sure people have known, but it's After Dark podcast. And I started listening to some of their things on the Tudors, where they're historians who bring on other historians. There's actually a video where they are interviewing Philippa Gregory about a different book that she wrote. And so that's been really fascinating. So over the past few days, weeks or so since finishing this book, I have learned a little bit more. So still nowhere near an expert. I did really like this book. It is a little bit of product of its time. It's very early 2000s coded with how they kind of discuss interactions both with women and one of the gay, or is he bisexual, brothers. And so that it felt very of its time, for better or for worse. In my opinion, it's a little bit for worse, but hey. Overall, though, I thought that this was very much a fun book. It was very entertaining and compelling. So if you are interested in a book about the Tudors, I would pick this one up. There is a reason it was so popular. The next one that I picked up here was Kokun, the Girl from the West. This book was absolutely fantastic. I am going to give this one 12 brilliant depictions of just honestly grass and insects and just sunshine. I loved this book. I have never just needed a translation to come out so much in my life. This is a book that is, the sequel is out in Japanese though. I don't speak Japanese, so I am relying on the translations here. The first translated work. This book has been out for a while, and it sounds like the sequel's been out for a while too, but it was just recently translated into English, or at least this edition came out. And the sequel has not come out yet, and I need it to come out simply because this book was beautiful. It starts on a literal cliffhanger and ends on a metaphorical cliffhanger. But we are in this fantasy world where we have a girl who she is very, very hypersensitive to smell. And she can smell the plants around her and can see what living things need. She can smell poisons. She's very in touch with just nature and things around her. And so she uses her extraordinary sense of smell in this magical world to her advantage. As she's a refugee. Her family was kind of on the run after a political coup, and she and her brother is the heir to this country, have fled to a nearby country that is not one of their allies. It's actually a little bit of a political enemy, but she is in hiding, both she and her brother, in this new country. And this new country specifically is very much run by this farming of one very specific crop. This crop can grow pretty much anywhere. And it's very invasive. It has no real enemies besides there's one type of insect, this locust, that is its natural pest. But other than that, this crop grows like weeds. It's this type of wheat. And this has become the staple of the country where everyone is growing it. And when it grows, it chokes out life, any other type of plant growth around it. in the soil for years to come. So if you've planted this wheat and then you try to grow something else in that soil, something else will not grow, it will not flourish. And so the entire country subsists on this one crop. And then, of course, the locusts are coming. And we are kind of using this girl who has this ability to kind of smell out things that are happening in nature to hopefully solve this impending doom. And for a fantasy novel that is around farming, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I so wish I spoke Japanese just to simply know how it really was in the original, because the translation of this is just beautiful. Very, very much waiting for the sequel to come out. Who knows how long it will be until that happens. But this one is absolutely fantastic. So if you are interested in a really good, fun fantasy translated work, would highly recommend Kokun the Girl from the West. The next book here I have is Roses of Carterhaugh by Melissa Widmeyer. And this is a book that I picked up at a local bookstore because it's written by a local author. And she was there selling this book in particular. She had quite a few copies of it. And she was absolutely so nice. She was very willing to talk about this book. She has this one and she has a couple others. All of them are young adult. This is the only one that she had copies of to sell. And she was so nice. She went ahead and personalized it for me. We got to chatting about her books. She is Scottish, and so a lot of her books have to deal with Scottish folklore. And are using like the Gaelic, and it was very, very interesting. She was very nice to even let me know how to pronounce Carterhaugh, just so that way I don't look ridiculous when I come on here and talk about it. So she was absolutely really, really nice. Have nothing bad to say about her, was very kind. And I know it's very nerve-wracking to kind of sit in a local bookstore and hope that people come up to buy your books. So I thought that she was just she seemed like a very, very nice person. The book is not necessarily for me, and there are a couple reasons why. And so I'm going to rate this one 2 greyhounds. For me, so it is, like I alluded to, it's YA. She was talking about it being upper YA, and I would agree that the writing style lends itself to being a YA book. It was very clear. She had a good glossary in the back as well for information about like various terms, both in English, maybe some words that might be a little bit more difficult, and then also having information about some of the actual Gaelic and things like that, and some of the Scottish folklore. Has a huge glossary in there. Very, very well done. It seemed very knowledgeable. So I could see why, from a writing standpoint, it'd be YA. From a content standpoint, I would not consider this one YA. And I mean, I know that I read a lot worse when I was a child. I read a lot worse when I was a teenager. But just knowing what some of the storylines, just for me, it definitely would be the upper version of upper YA, because there's a lot of things that happen off page, but they are extremely implied. So I'm going to get into some of those. I will put a timestamp here for you can just to skip ahead to my next book in case this is something that you feel like you want to pick up and don't want to be spoiled. So I'll go ahead and give you time to do that now. Okay, so for people who actually want to know some of what the content is about here, it's a story about, it's kind of a retelling of the Tam Lin myth, where we have a boy who he was pulled into the fairy realm, and now he has to wait along. He can kind of go into just small pieces on the outskirts of fairy, and can interact with the mortal world only in this small little sliver. And he is in fairy for hundreds of years. Everyone he knows has died, and he meets a mortal girl who is brave enough to go to this place on the edge of fairy. They fall in love, and then the Seelie Queen gets extremely, extremely mad and demands like a blood sacrifice. And the parts of the story that for me just do not feel YA is there is a lot of both referenced sex and then sexual violence that is key to the storyline. And the sex part, it's all off page, like it's very implied, or like it's extremely vague and veiled, and so it's nothing like explicit when it comes to that, and that's fine. Like in my opinion, I mean, I'm not a mom, but if I knew that some of that part was something that my teenager was reading, that probably wouldn't be a problem for me personally. Use your own discretion. But the sexual violence aspect of it absolutely caused red flags, where we have a fairy who disguises himself like Tamlin to then assault the female main character. It's off page, but then she comes back and she is pregnant, and she is ostracized by her community because of how very visibly pregnant she is so quickly, and she is engaged to another man. And then this kind of protection for her and her growing child, it kind of motivates her both to, in the beginning, break up with Tamlin, and then when she finds out that he wasn't the one who harmed her, then she decides that she's going to fight for him because he is wrongly accused, and she is going to attempt to rescue him. And then it all ends up getting snapped away, where it's okay, happily ever after. And for me, I was like, huh? And we try to do a bit of a bait and switch at the very end to redeem her assaulter. And for me, that was just off-putting. And for me, I was like, hey, is this supposed to be YA? Because, I mean, I've read a lot of, like, grimdark fantasy, but that's a little grim for upper YA. And so I know that a lot of folklore and a lot of fairy tales are a lot darker than kind of Disney likes to make it. And there are, I don't want to be too prudish here, because teenagers have been around for as long as people have been around for, and they have heard stories like this and been just fine. Folklore has a very rich history. It's been around for a while, and I'm sure that teenagers were hearing this story in old-timey Scotland, and so I'm sure that the author is just keeping the tale alive through this story, and keeping the kind of folklore of her heritage around. But for me, as a modern reader today, I'm sitting here, I'm like, wow, maybe not YA. So this is the book for somebody. For me personally, just not it. For me personally, it felt like it should have been rewritten and maybe done for a adult audience as opposed to a young adult. And again, all of this happens not explicitly on page, but it's very, very heavily implied. And then especially with the assault scene, you get the fade to black, and then she's pregnant, and so you know what happened, and it's very clear that she was not happy about it, and so for me, maybe I'm just being too sensitive, but that made me kind of question, and I almost wish it had been written for an older audience. If we're going to keep that in, go for it. I'm fine with that, but it just, as an upper YA, maybe not. But from an author standpoint, she was absolutely fantastic. I wish her absolutely nothing but the best. There were a lot of things that she did extremely well in this book. This one personally wasn't the one for me, and I think if it hadn't been described as YA, maybe I would have been more open to the idea of it. The next book here I really, really liked. This is part of a large series that I probably will keep going with at some point here. This is His Majesty's Dragon by Naomi Novik, and I'm going to rate this one 5 species of dragons. This is a book that I thought it was really, really interesting. It is set in the time of the Napoleonic Wars, and we are following a captain on a ship who he kind of plunders a nearby enemy ship. There's a French ship that he ends up taking over, and he and his crew get all their cargo, and among the cargo is this dragon egg. And And so the dragon hatches, it bonds to the captain, and we are following him as suddenly he is part of, instead of the Royal Navy, he's part of the Royal Air Force on Dragonback in the Napoleonic Wars. And I thought it was really, really well done. I thought it was very beautifully written. I thought that it was very vivid. There is a whole host of kind of dragons and different temperaments of the dragons, different types of dragons, very interesting, like species of dragons. Each one is different. You are following him kind of trying to rise in the ranks both of the Air Force with the commanders and this completely new form of militia that he is very much not a part of, and he very much feels like he's part of like the Navy's supremacy, but he suddenly is pushed into this completely other lifestyle that he had no idea he would ever be a part of. And the treatment of how there are certain dragons that only bond to women. And so suddenly he is a man who is in Regency time period, and he is having to answer to various women and other various men, the rising tempers and kind of clashes there with that, how certain dragon riders treat their dragons very well and others treat them very poorly. And kind of the dynamics there. So it was very, very interesting. Honestly, if you are somebody who likes the idea of Fourth Wing without there's still a romance plotline in this. I was going to say Fourth Wing without the romance, but it still has romance in this, so I can't even say that. If you want kind of well-written Fourth Wing, in Regency era, I would pick this one up. Very, very interesting. The first book is kind of the young dragon as it is very young, and we will go forth from there. And so I definitely think that I will be picking this one up. Maybe not immediately. Obviously, I have a couple other books here that I did pick up instead of just binging the whole series, but I really, really enjoyed it. And so if this sounds up your alley, I would definitely give His Majesty Dragon a try. Alrighty, the next book series that I picked up here is part of a duology. This is the Ever King duology. So I read the Ever King and the Ever Queen, and I am going to rate these ones extremely differently. The Ever King gets 6 epic ship rides, courtesy of Pirates of the Caribbean, where that ship just bursts out of the ocean. This first book was so much fun. I absolutely loved the first book. It is a romantasy book where we are following these two people who are on either sides. They're from enemy kingdoms. In the days of old, in the prologue, the boy was captured as part of the ending negotiations and ending of this big war between these two realms. And the boy was captured, the Ever realm was defeated, and so he was being kept prisoner for a little bit because they didn't know what they wanted to do with him, because he was going to be the next Ever King, but he was still a boy. And as a child, the daughter of the winning ruler goes down and tells him stories, and the two kind of become friends while he is in his time being held in prison, and the family's trying to decide, the winning side is trying to decide what they want to do with him. Eventually he gets released back to Ever and is banished, and there's a big chasm that is between the two. But before he goes, the boy gives the girl a piece of, it's honestly, it felt like a mirror. I might be, it's like this piece of this magical artifact. And he tells her that she needs to keep it safe. It's the source of his family's power, and that one day he'll be back for it. He gets banished, and then she drops it. It breaks, and it ends up cutting her, and it leaves this really deep scar and this mark, and she kind of hides the mark, hides the fact that the artifact is broken, and eventually forgets that he would even be coming for it, because she thinks, well, years have passed, he's never come for it. And then one day he does, and he ends up, because it is broken, and she has this mark, he ends up taking her back to the Ever realm, and it's this seafaring, honestly kind of swashbuckling pirate tale of him kidnapping her And then the two, of course, end up falling in love. They have this bond. He's not a good dude, but it's just a fun time. This is kind of one of those people where it's like, you know how Taylor Swift had her Reputation album, and suddenly like Taylor Swift is trying to be edgy, but it's like, hey, you're Taylor Swift, like you're not edgy, like you're trying to, and it's a fun time, but that's not really who you are at your core. Maybe this very much felt like the beginner's guide to like dark romance, and it's not super edgy, but for some people, Reputation is their favorite Taylor Swift album. For some people, this is going to be their absolute favorite dark romance book. And I'm not going to yuck your yum. It's not super dark in my opinion, but like the author very much in kind of the buzz I've heard around this book very much leans into kind of the dark aspect of the dark romance. The title page is kind of like for those who fall in love with the villain instead of the hero or something like that. Let me read it. Yeah, this is so the dedication here. It says, "To the queens who love the beautiful black heart of the villain, face it, they're hotter than the hero." So it's trying to be edgy. In my opinion, it's just very vanilla for dark romance, but for some people, this is going to be their absolute favorite book. I thought it was so much fun. Like, I don't want to be digging on it at all. It's like, yeah, sure. Like when he cuts off the hand of a man who hurts her and then turns it into a necklace for her to wear and to kind of remind others of what happens if you hurt his woman. Like, okay. I loved this first one. I thought it was really, really good. I liked the first one so much. I thought it was so much fun that I picked up the second book. And spoiler alert, I did not like the second. Something big happens at the end of the first book, and that kind of propels you into is the catalyst for the second book. In my opinion, the second book lost some of the fun, the tension, the witty banter that was really good in the first one and made the first one so strong. I thought that the two leads had a lot of chemistry in the first book, and they had a lot of on-page time together because of just the nature of the story. And so when the big event happens, it kind of separates our two main characters for the majority of the book, and their loss of their interactions did kind of lose me. There are a lot of really good like buddy up moments, kind of unlikely allies, especially given the first one that happens in this, and I thought that those were really, really well done. But this one it lost steam. For me, it was not as good as the first one. It lost kind of the fun swashbuckling time. And there was no real tension because like, other than are they going to come back together again? But then the moment that they're available to come back together, like there is no other incident. It's kind of like the end of the story, but then the story keeps going for another 200 pages. And so this one just was not for me. I have a friend of mine who was reading the third book in this at the same time that I finished this. And so she was like, we should read them together. And Christina, I love the idea. We absolutely should pick a book and read it together. I know we've talked about reading The Raven Scholar together. Potentially, I would love to pick a book and buddy read it. Not this one though. I am going to be done with this series. I will say LJ Andrews, I did really like the first book, and so I would not be opposed to picking up another LJ Andrews book in the future, but maybe not in this world. The second book lost steam for me, and I'm worried that the rest of them would just kind of be similar to that, especially since we're no longer following this main character couple, but we'd be following other characters. And I think that that's part of what lost me in this book here. All right, and I am about to completely be hit by the sun here, so it's perfect time to do a very, very brief discussion of a book that I'm currently reading. I am about 100 pages into Once Was Willem, and I will check back in with you when I'm finished if this keeps going on the trajectory it's currently going. But if it keeps going the way it's going right now, I'm going to love this book. So I will save my full review for it when I've actually finished it, because I'm only 100 pages in and it could take a nosedive from here. But within the first 100 pages, I am absolutely loving it. The first 100 pages are, I kid you not, like Frankenstein meets the Starving Saints, which I will link the video that I talked about the Starving Saints here. But I absolutely loved that book. I love Frankenstein. This book feels made for me. It is a medieval tale about I honestly it's a medieval tale, and I will leave it extremely vague. I picked this one up at a whim at a local bookstore. It was the only one there. The cover, well, honestly, I think it was the spine was very interesting. The spine drew me in, and I said, I've never heard of this book." Pulled it out. The cover was an absolute piece of me. This is the only one that was the only copy that was at my local bookstore when I went there. And I went to go ahead and read the back, and the back was extremely vague. And I was like, I have to pick this one up just to see where it goes. So I went into this almost blind. The back just says, "From the international best-selling author of The Girl with All the Gifts comes a wildly original and enthrallingly dark medieval fantasy, unlike anything you've ever read before. A fable of twisted folklore, macabre magic, and the strangest of found families." And I'm hooked. This book is genuinely exactly that. I had no idea what I was in for because of how vague it was. I'd never heard of this book. I will check back in if it's worth the praises that I'm singing of it in the first 100 pages, but we are off to a very, very good start, and I will check back in with you for next month's wrap up, for better or for worse. All right, and that is the end of all of the books that I read this month for April. I hope that you find one that you are at least a little bit interested. Hope you find one that you end up picking up for your TBR. And maybe if any of these were on your list of should I get into this, hopefully hearing a very brief overview, just basically some light information about it and a rating, helps you decide if this is one that you think that you would pick up. So thank you for spending some time with me, and I hope that you had a fantastic April and a great upcoming May to come.